Hello, and welcome to the first of Leicester's Belfort Aerodrome training series for World War I aircraft in flight gear. Today, we're going to give a little how-to on the operation of a typical French World War I type of rotary-engined aircraft. This particular one is a Nieuport 10, which was used as a training craft throughout the war. This plane is controlled, this plane in particular has a coupe switch function on the ignition, which allows you to throttle the engine by turning the ignition circuit on and off using your joystick trigger button. Let's go into the cockpit and get familiarized with the controls. Okay, on your left-hand side, looking down into the cockpit, you will see there's a throttle control, which I'm moving right now. If you hold down the M key and the Shift M key, you move the mixture control. Above the throttle controls are the ignition switches. Click the upper edge of them to turn them on. Click the lower edge to turn them off. Your joystick, which follows your main joystick control. Aileron, elevator front and back, aileron side to side. Rudder, and then you have a tachometer in front of you. At your feet is the compass, and to the right is the altimeter. Now we're not going to focus too much on using those as much as we're going to start using the HUD control. Tap the H key to bring up your HUD. Make sure it's in non-3D setup. Let's start the engine now. Click the upper edge of the two magneto switches to turn them on. Make sure your throttle is at about 1/3 open. Press the S key to start the engine. When it reaches about 100 RPM, pull the trigger control on your joystick, and that'll get the engine to start earlier. Now, if you close the trigger, you'll notice that it shuts the engine off. This is your coupe switch. What it's doing is it's shutting the ignition off whenever you hold the trigger control down. Now we're going to advance the throttle to half. Make sure your mixture is full, and we're going to do a little taxiing around. Let's go to an external view. Press your Shift and B key to release the brakes. And as you can see, the airplane will start rolling along. Now we don't want to let the airplane go much faster than about 8 or 9 knots. So once it reaches about 6 or 7 knots, pull the ignition, put the coupe in, cut the engine RPM a little bit. Keep your ground speed at below 9 to 10 knots. Otherwise, you'll find that you may do a ground loop. Get yourself established into the wind. Cut your switch. Let it come to a stop. Return to the cockpit. Widen your field of view a little bit. Keep couping the engine. Okay, we're pointed into the wind. We're about ready to give it full throttle. Let's give it full throttle and let's go through the procedures of taking off. Okay, engine RPM reaches about 1100 RPM. Release the brakes. You start rolling forward. Push the stick forward to bring the tail up at about 20 knots. Feed in a little bit of right aileron and correct any yawing with the rudder control. When you reach 50 knots, pull back on the stick and start your climb. Allow the airplane to climb at about 62 knots. That's your best climb rate for this aircraft. We're going to climb to about 1,000 feet and then level off and reduce throttle to about 1 to 2/3. Okay, we've reached 900 feet, starting to start lowering the nose. Level off, pull your throttle back to 2/3. Establish a level flight speed of about anywhere from 70 to 68 knots. And now what we're going to do is start a gentle turn to the right, go past the western outer edge of the airfield. We just took off from Ochi Airfield, which is Lima Foxtrot Sierra Oscar. It's a fairly good choice if you're in a European FlightGear scenery area because it's a very large airfield and it gives you a lot of options for directions to take off. This is especially good if you're running real weather fetch. Notice that your RPM gauge is somewhere around 1,000 RPM. I mean, it can be 100 RPM on either side of it. You want to establish a good cruise speed of around 70 knots. 68 to 72 is fine. A little slower is not bad. You just want to maintain a level altitude. You can go in and reduce your mixture if you want. We're not going to play with that right now. If you were going on a very long trip, it would be good to optimize your fuel mixture by holding down the shift key and tapping the M key to bring your RPM up a little bit to optimize the mixture. But for now, we need to have full mixture just in case we need to do another go around. When you come in for approach and you blow your landing, you'll want to have full power to the engine for your climb out. We're going to go about a half mile to 3/4 of a mile downwind of the airfield and start our turn to the right to make our approach. Then remember to keep your orientation with the airfield. If you've got a big crosswind, you'll notice that you'll get blown off your approach line. So you may need to turn a little bit more to the right to maintain that. Now we're going to start our turn for the approach. And as we start our turn for the approach, we're going to also lower the nose a little bit and start couping the engine slightly to reduce our airspeed some. This will also mean that we're going to start our descent for the landing. Average your RPM at around 900 RPM, 8 to 900 RPM. And now you can start adding more, you can lengthen the amount that the engine's turned off to reduce your airspeed some and to start your descent for the approach. And keep it at around 600 to 700 RPM. 58 knots is a good approach speed. Start adding a little bit of upstick. You don't want to descend too quickly. You want to keep your airspeed down. Now keep your RPM at around 500. Watch your altitude. When you get within about 100 feet of above ground level, you'll want to start pulling the stick back. And start couping your engine even more. Start cutting the engine down to about a 20% off on duty cycle. At about 48 knots now, we're coming in. When we get to 25 feet above the ground level, pull the stick back and level the nose, get the nose above the horizon a little bit. Keep couping the engine. We want to slow down to about 40 knots. We make a very gentle approach now. Try to keep from bouncing too much on the mains. Keep couping the engine. Use the rudder to keep the airplane headed straight. Try not to let it drag its wingtip and let it roll to a stop. Okay, and there you've landed your airplane without ground looping or without nosing over. Thanks for watching.